What's up, you filthy flapjacks? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. For today's episode, I talked with Lucas Margulies, who records and produces as Durr. He's been a prolific member of the underground hip-hop scene in the Twin Cities for the last 5 years, releasing 9 albums, with another coming at the end of the month. We talked about how he started making music, the forthcoming record, and DIY hip-hop in general. Here's my interview with Durr on the Ear Coffee Podcast. Today, I am joined by Lucas, who produces and records music as Durr. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Since we're all in a very unfamiliar and kind of bad situation right now, what have you been up to in quarantine? Like, what has kept you going over the last couple months? Just whether producing music, because obviously you've been working on stuff, or day-to-day things.
Yeah, it's really been finishing this record, working on some other material, and right now the job that I'm working is still in business and pretty much booming, so I've been doing that a lot too.
I mean, on one hand, I'm happy that you're able to still be employed, but also it sucks. I hope that everything is safe and okay.
Oh yeah, we have 2 people walking around all day sanitizing every surface, so it's all good.
That sucks for them, but that's reassuring.
Yeah, definitely. It keeps us safe.
Yeah. So I like to kind of frame my interviews with the same 2 questions, and we'll obviously get to the second one later, but I love to hear about what people's first kind of formative experiences with music were, like the first times you really remember perceiving and like listening to music on a more than passive level, on a very active level. And in your case, since for those who don't know, you also have been playing in the band Pierre for almost a decade now.
Yeah.
You have been making 2 very different genres of music. So I'm curious to hear if you had separate formative, like those influential first experiences with, I guess, more rock-based music, and then hip-hop, which is what you create as Durr, obviously.
Right, yeah. I grew up on the Beatles and classical music that I got from my dad, and Michael Jackson too. And so I guess having that Michael Jackson influence was a little bit hip hop, but the hip hop thing didn't click until I heard Eminem.
Okay. Yeah. When did you first hear
Eminem? Oh, probably like 7th grade, like 6th or 7th grade. And then when I first listened, I was hooked.
Do you remember what song or like what record it was, out of curiosity?
No, not exactly. Like, I remember hearing a spoof of Without Me on Nickelodeon. It was like Without Meat. And then and then after that, dude, I don't know. I just like dove in. That stuff is insane.
Yeah. So jumping ahead a little bit, and we won't delve too much into this because, as I believe you mentioned, Pierre will be working on a record sometime, hopefully soon.
Yep.
How did you start making music with that band? And that was about 2012, correct me if I'm wrong?
Yeah. Well, in like late 2011 or so, we were just goofing around. Like, me and Kevin had a band that Dunn would fill in on bass with, and we had disbanded. So we were just kind of hanging, doing whatever, and then we had like separate 2-pieces. So me and Dunn were in a 2-piece, me and Kevin were in a 2-piece, and then Dunn and Kevin were in a 2-piece. And then Dunn one day was like, "Hey man, what if we started a real band?" And I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea. I'll ask Kevin to play drums. I bet he would." And that was it.
There you go. That's actually funny. This 2 separate 2-pieces.
Yeah, man. Uh-huh.
Yeah. With Durr, though, you've started releasing the music in late 2015. What kind of led you to make hip hop beyond just being a fan? Because you talked about that listening to Eminem for the first time, but
yeah,
you've been in rock bands for, sounds like, at least a handful of years, but then you started producing and rapping, obviously. Talk about how that started in like 2015, whatever.
Yeah, It was probably earlier than that because when I was like 16 or so, well, I mean, even earlier than that, like me and Kevin, oh man, we used to make these spoof rap songs under the name Durr 3, and that was the business, like way back when. And when I was like 16 or so, I would legitimately write verses, and never really took it seriously or recorded it on purpose. And then Tyler, the Creator, was really inspiring to me. I saw that you could do it like DIY and you could do it in your own way. So I started under the name Song John Silver to make like really wackadoo rap music. And
Okay.
yeah, and once I heard like that cloud rap stuff like Bones and Xavier Wolf and Young Lean, like that whole camp of SoundCloud rappers especially influenced me and inspired me to take it seriously, get some production equipment, and start actually recording myself, because I've wanted to rap and make hip-hop music for a very long time.
Talk about a little bit creating that first project, which was Hold, at least as far as you released it. I didn't realize that Thong John Silver, what a thing to say, was you, because I thought like you
Really?
didn't start producing your own stuff until like a couple of years later. But no, now that you've mentioned that, the first tape is all you. Okay, but yeah, talk about Hold a little bit.
Yeah, what can I say about Hold, dude? I was driving around a lot, and I was spray painting a lot, and I was like trying to get this job at Postmates or whatever, trying to work at Postmates, and like, I don't know, I would just keep coming home and doing that and just making music. And because at that point I was saying, like, can I swear? Because I was saying, fuck it, dude, I just have to do this for real, because it had been like on my mind for so long. And that was Hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of first burst of inspiration seems to have lasted like a full year, because you put out 5 projects within that like first 12 months. And it's since like slowed down to about a project per year, at least one. But
Right.
Was it really just like that first kind of that burst of energy that came from finally creating and releasing stuff as Durr that led to such a prolific first 12 months of the project?
Oh yeah, dude. It was like, I finally freaking made it and did the thing. And honestly, I wouldn't have stopped. I moved, and I was doing like different things with my life, and so it wasn't as it didn't make as much sense to just record all the time. But like, I'm back to basics now, dude. It feels good.
After that first year, when you started, like, starting with 2017 or so, it's been about one full-length tape or album a year.
Yep.
Did it slow down because you were just busier with other things, with Pierre, with just work, other life things, or were you just taking a little bit more time with the projects and kind of, I mean, the sound, the albums still sound really raw, and that's kind of like the style you've been working in, but like, I guess the work, like everything, like the process of creating it was a little bit more focused instead of just, I'm creating constantly and making as much as possible.
Yes, definitely. Quantity over quality, and also it was like life stuff was different and is different. So I've gotten way more into mixing and taking time and like just tightening it up, you know?
Yeah. This is gonna be a bit more broad, but talk a little bit about walk us through how you create, I guess, a prototypical Durr song. Like, where do you take your lyrical inspiration from? Because it's a mixture of like kind of emotional stuff and then kind of goofier, like amusing stuff, and then sometimes you like relegate those two tones to different songs. Because like you had your Corona joke song earlier this year, and that's obviously like very, very not serious. Talk a little bit about how you come, like where you take your lyrical inspiration from, and what you tend to look for in your beats, whether it's just like stuff you come up with or whether it's like sampling. And we'll talk a little bit more about sampling in a bit. But yeah, cool. Just how do you make a Durr song?
Yeah, I have Reason, and I have a MIDI keyboard, and that's my whole beat situation. And I'll sit down, I'll write a melody that I think is cool. I'll loop it for a little bit, add some bass to it, get some drum sounds, and that's how the beat forms. Typically it just does itself after a while. It's good stuff. And I can tell when, okay, I'm going to use this beat for sure. And I can tell when, like, nah, this is not going to last. Because if I'm making the beat, sometimes I'll just, like, start phonetically, like, okay, this is what the lyrics are going to sound like. This is what the words are going to sound like. And then the lyrics are a mix of, I'm Durr, this is what I do, and how I'm relating to Earth, I guess.
Okay. Talk a little bit more with that last bit. Like, what do you kind of tend to? What are you drawn to when you're, I guess, talking about like that more, I guess, almost spiritual stuff, like the relating to Earth? That's maybe just the way you phrased it made it sound like all metaphysical.
It is, man. This is a very spiritual experience. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of relationship struggles with people, and also not struggles and really good things. And then there's the relationship that I have with drugs and with anything, other art, and my human experience, my body, the way it looks and works. Whack, dude.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's just all about relationships. That's a really interesting way of putting it.
Yeah. Wow.
So, as I have now realized, you self-produced the first tape, but
Yep.
At least according to like Bandcamp crediting and everything, you worked with a lot of other producers in between that first project, and I think Hippie the Kid was like your first, like back to being self-produced album.
Yep.
Why did you want to work with other producers during that time, and what led you to return to kind of doing everything yourself and just making your own beats again? Or at least even if you were making beats during like that 2016 to 2018 period, like you weren't putting them on your songs. What led you to start, I guess, producing and actually having that come out as beats for Durr?
Right. Yeah, those there's like two tapes in the middle of that discography called True Emo and Homegrown, and those are all from like YouTube beat makers.
Okay.
I was and still am really into Bones, and so I was like, I just want to make a hip hop project like with these beats that sound like this, and I didn't know how to make beats that sounded like that. So I just like, I got them, I would just rap on them, and that was the shit. And then yeah, I had someone that was telling me like it doesn't sound like Durr anymore, you know? And I was like, that's a really good point. And so I just went back to making my own beats, and I plan to unless one of my friends is making it, like I plan to make my own beats forever.
Yeah, you just cultivate the sound a little bit more and kind of be consistent with that. Yeah.
It's my own thing.
So, this is kind of a side note, but not really, because it's still really closely tied with Durr and the music you make. But talk a little bit about the hippie cult name, the imagery, and like what its significance is to the Durr project. Because I was like, as far as like the marketing and like the artwork design and everything, it's very closely intertwined. So yeah.
Yeah, it's the label, it's the movement.
Okay.
It's like a broader idea. Yeah, I've always been into hippies. Like Woodstock and the 60s and acid and all that.
Have you actually worked with like any other rappers or just other musicians to release stuff with Hippie Cult? I didn't immediately find anything online when I was looking at stuff up before the interview. But yeah, have you collaborated with anybody else as far as releasing their music and actually like making Hippie Cult, I guess, more concrete of a thing instead of just like a more like a mindset almost, like that movement you said?
Yeah, it's a mindset. I said at my show on January 30th when I released Capsaicin, like if you like me, like my music, if this is like part of your life at all, then you're Hippie Cult, and that's what it is. If I'm putting out a song with somebody, then that song is Hippie Cult.
Tight. Yeah, so it's a little bit more loose then.
Yeah, it's broad.
Dope. Since you've released one project already this year, and it's capsaicin. Is that how you said it?
Yep, capsaicin. Yeah.
That came out in January. The name, and correct me if I'm wrong, it comes from like the active ingredient of like what makes chili peppers spicy. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
Cool. Well, the thing that stood out to me most versus like just kind of going through all your other your discography was that the production was very sample based, and maybe it's just because I was more aware of it because you like credited all the samples on Bandcamp. But
Right.
what led you to work with like a lot of these like iconic songs? That, like these are very well known songs, very well known artists. Like why work with samples all of a sudden versus like all your other stuff before? A lot of it, at least, was all you.
Right, that's true. And I had this idea floating around in my head to sample Cream's White Room, which you hear in Scream, that, you know, and it just kept repeating. So one day I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And it was really fun. And the beat came, like, I didn't expect to use all those other songs. I just had the records on hand, and I was like, what if I put that one on? What if I put that one on? And it was awesome, and it worked out. And so I figured I would just make a sample-based project, so the whole thing has some sort of a sample in each song.
Yeah, like Scream It, I think has like 4 or 5 just in the one track, which was kind of like crazy. That was cool.
I laid them on, man. It was really fun.
Yeah. Cool. Jumping ahead even more to very recently, literally yesterday, we're recording this on May 16th, you put out your new single Monkish.
Yep.
The production of that was surprising. It was kind of like shoegazy almost. It sounded like the production vibe was much more rock oriented or guitar oriented than like, with still the same like kind of trap and like hip hop elements that you've been using. But where'd you come up with like that production for the new single? Because it feels like you're almost like rapping over like some like shoegaze instrumental.
Yeah, dude. Thank you. Real inspired by Sesh, like 2014 Sesh, and like Lil Peep, that kind of stuff.
Oh, yep.
And yeah, dude, and figured I would just do it on my own because I have different influences than those guys also, and I play the guitar myself. I don't have to sample it. So.
Yeah, that's convenient.
Yeah,
tight. So is Monkish going to be on your next album, or is it just a standalone single that you finish it and you're like, well, might as well put it out now and just get something out there?
Yep, that's the title track for the next album. It'll be coming out on May 29th.
Oh, May 29th. Has it even been announced?
No.
You're going to go like the real DIY route and be like album out in 7 days or something like that.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right, man. Yep.
I haven't heard the album, unfortunately, and I'm excited to hear when it does drop.
Thanks.
But what I guess was like your mindset going into that, and like especially if it differs more from Capsaicin and like the production isn't sample based anymore. But talk a little bit about your mindset for the new record that's coming out soon.
Yeah, I said it's gloomy and hopeful. I tweeted that because it is. It's got a very gloomy, like you said, kind of shoegazy sound, spacey, and I don't know. I guess I dive into a little bit more territory about. I don't know. I guess like you were saying earlier, it's all like emotional and relational anyway, and so it hasn't really changed that much. I'm excited for it, dude. I collaborated with some very, very talented people who are playing guitar and singing on this album since it's guitar based, and I know so many people from DIY that freaking do that. So I'm jazzed. Yeah.
Do you want to name any names? Because this will probably be coming out just around the time of the album.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay, sure. I got Internet Dating on there. I got Grant from Heart to Gold. I got Soul Ava. I also have Zach Morris from Casual Play Some Bass, and Tyler Smith from Grandma has a guitar part on there as well.
Oh, that's tight. Yeah. I think, when I was looking through the old stuff, like there was a collab with Nikki from In Lieu on one of your, I don't remember the exact tape that it was on, but that was really a cool surprise. So it kind of seems like it's going to be more of that vibe, like the featured vocalist, like, or like featured instrumentalist.
Yeah, tight. Definitely.
Cool. So my kind of broadest question is, and I think you'll have a really unique perspective on this since you've been involved in the local hip hop and local rock scenes for quite some time.
Yeah.
So the hip hop scene is obviously very vibrant, very active here in the cities. Same with like the DIY, like emo, punk, like the rock band scene, I guess, if to put it kind of reductively. But
Yeah.
there's not a lot of overlap as far as just like collaborations, as far as mixed bills at like house shows. Yeah, I guess just talk a little bit about your experience as a active member in each of those respective scenes, and I guess maybe why you think there hasn't been as much overlap. And at least that's been my
Yeah.
perception. And so if I'm wrong, feel free to just dunk on me, like go for it. But if that is the case, then yeah, just talk about how what your awareness about that has been.
Yeah, I think in general you're right. As Pierre and also as Durr, we've like strived to make mixed bills. Like we had Nibs play one of our tour homecoming shows. We've had Sugo play with us. And then also on the Durr side of things, I've done shows with heavy bands on purpose. Like my Fall for Anything release had Ciroc and the band Piss on Your Dad, which is now Piss.
Yeah.
And they're like crust punk grind and everything like that. But yeah, dude, I don't know. I think it's easier to set up a punk rock show because all you need really to mic is the vocals. With hip hop, it's different. You need the beats. It's got to sound decent, not quiet, maybe actually loud and really good, like you'd hear a band.
Yeah.
And they don't really ride in the house show circuit as much. And I really wanted to see that, so I tried to do that. And then right before this whole coronavirus thing came, like that was my goal for this year, was to make it way more common to see DIY hip hop in basements.
Yeah. Like I've only been myself to, I think, one mixed bill show, and that was like a tour kickoff for like Marmalade. And then Kwani was, and one of his friends had like a set, and they were going for it for like, it was super energetic. So it's, I feel like the reason people aren't at least as like aren't actively trying to kind of bridge that gap is because they've never experienced it. And they don't really know what it'll be like, and they're afraid. Would you say that's kind of the case, or like?
Yeah, and people stick with what they know. Like if they're a rock band, they'll want to play with other rock bands. It makes sense, and they honestly probably don't know a lot of people who are making hip hop. Not that there's anything to do with like because they're playing rock and roll. It's just because like they're different scenes.
Exactly.
How would you find them if you don't know? Yeah.
Yeah. What are there any like ways that, like, I guess just as a fan as well as a creator, that you stay up to date and like how you kind of, I guess, learn about new rappers, new producers, new artists on that side of things? Because obviously, like, just like Twitter and Bandcamp and everything is how like the punk and emo kids find out about each other and then book gigs together. But is it different or similar and just like its own separate universe for the hip hop scene? Like, how do you find out about new artists?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't exactly know how you do that, man. Maybe
I don't think there's like a methodology or anything.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of like how I met all my friends, and like like all the Lost Boys dudes in Wisconsin I met through the internet because Riggs really liked Pierre, and then I met Cam because someone else put him on a bill and stuff like that. So maybe if you just attract what you're becoming kind of thing, and then also if you were really trying to find out, like put a post out or ask one of your friends, hey, do you know any local hip hop? Like what's going on in that scene right now? And I'm sure you'll find out eventually.
And yeah, that'll kind of, almost to use a possibly risky metaphor, it'll spread like a virus, but in a good way, where like you find out about one, then you find about like, oh, there's a couple people featured on their latest project, and then hear about them, and it just kind of
That's
spreads
exactly
out.
it, man. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I try to like collaborate with especially the hip hop artists that I really like and that are my friends, because I want people to know about them if they know about me. So.
Yeah, that's tight. So my last question is, like I said before, I like wrapping interviews up the same way, and continuing with just the local hip hop scene thing, especially during quarantine. Like, what are there any like local rappers and producers that you've been listening to and kind of turning to as a way of keeping yourself sane, or even beyond that, who are some local hip hop artists that you want to shout out that you think people should be made aware of, especially since most of the people listening to this are more on the punk emo side of things?
For sure. Definitely formerly Cam. And if you want to find him on Spotify, it's formerly space like quotes capital C-A-M, quotes, formerly Cam. He puts out EPs that are like 7 songs, and it's just one track. It's brilliant. He's great. Yeah, and then there's a whole camp of Lost Boys in Wisconsin. I'll always shout them out. Those are my guys. They help me out with art, like, every time I put out an album. Yeah, Lost Boys forever. And then that's about as far as it would go. I don't know many others, dude. I miss Frompy. If anyone remembers Frompy, like, tell me what's going on with him. But, yeah, man.
Yeah. What else have you been listening to keep yourself, keep yourself, like, mentally and emotionally grounded during lockdown and everything?
Yeah, grindcore. I've been listening to that Caustic Wound album that came out. It's fantastic.
Yeah. That's tight.
Yeah, dude.
Cool. Well, that's it for my questions. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was awesome. I appreciate it. And appreciate you guys. Your coffee rocks.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @EarCoffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.